Welcome to Timeless Technology. This is the Sony Xperia XZ. For once, the name is fitting. This is a definite improvement over the disappointing Xperia X that I ranted about in my previous video. And they have made it great again by bringing back a lot of things that made the Z series special. This phone is Sony's return to form, with one exception though. However, let's talk about the design first. I really like how this phone looks and feels in the hand. It is one of the prettiest phones this year. It looks very elegant and minimalistic, yet functional at the same time. I like how this phone feels in the hand. The aluminium back is completely flat and has a nice, slightly matte texture. Smoother than the one in Xperia X, yet not completely glossy. Thus combining the best of both worlds. It has more friction than the usual matte backs, making it less slippery, and it doesn't catch as many fingerprints as completely glossy surfaces. I did, however, leave a scratch mark on the back. Not a biggie, but still keep that in mind. The thickness hits the sweet spot. Not too thin, not too thick, just right. This combined with the rounded sides makes it a very comfy phone to hold in the hand. The top and bottom of this phone feels like they were chopped off with a cleaver, and I like that because it reminds me of Nokia N9, which is one of my favorite phone designs of all time. The bottom is so flat you can put it on a table and it will stand straight on its own. This is Sony's first flagship with a USB Type-C port. Finally! There's also a 3.5mm audio jack on the top. Sad that it has to be specifically mentioned, but yes, it's still there. The front-facing speakers aren't particularly amazing, but they get the job done. The phone is IP68 certified, which means that it's water-resistant and dust-proof. While it isn't anything noteworthy, in 2016, with Samsung and even iPhone having water resistance, let's remember that Sony was the one who started this trend back in 2012. One of my favorite things about the Xperia phones is the fingerprint reader that is very neatly and discreetly hidden in the power button. It is fast and the location is easy to reach with the right thumb or left index finger. Overall, this is one fine looking device that feels pleasant to use. Similar things can be said about the hardware. The spec sheet of this phone isn't overly exciting, but it's solid and has everything that's needed. For example, the screen. It has a 1080p resolution, which seems a bit low compared to most of the other flagships, but in day-to-day use it was fine. I really like the colors, nice and vibrant, especially for an LCD display. The phone is powered by Snapdragon 820 chipset, which should be a given for a Sony flagship, but it isn't because the previous one, Xperia X, had a Snapdragon 650. However, for some reason Sony put only 3GB of RAM. Yeah. Other specs worth mentioning. This phone has a microSD slot and a 24-bit 192kHz audio playback, which is nice. XZ has a decent battery at 2900 mAh and it can last up to 2 days, especially with the excellent stamina mode. I usually get around 4 to 5 hours screen on time without any trouble, and it never had any issues surviving until the evening with one charge. That, coupled with quick charge, is excellent news for heavy users. Now we have arrived at the most painful part of this review. One would assume that Sony, the maker of the excellent A7 and RX100 cameras, would know how to cook up a great camera phone. But they don't. For some reason, Sony is still living in the times where more megapixels were better. This phone has the same sensor as the Z5, and even with bells and whistles like predictive autofocus, RGB IR color sensor and laser autofocus, this camera is disappointing. Most of the phone makers have figured out that by sacrificing the amount of pixels they can make each individual pixel larger, thus increasing their sensitivity to light. Sony, however, has made this camera with 23 megapixels, more than any competitor, and unless you want to print your pictures at humongous size, you are never going to fully use this resolution. Here are the pictures. I'm not even sure if it's the sensor's fault or is it the software. The colors are really nice, but when you zoom in, you can easily see how the edges are over-sharpened and fake looking. Sony makes the sensors for Samsung, HTC and iPhones, so it's weird seeing the ROM phone's camera being so mediocre. Sony has always had this weird issue as long as I can remember, so they should find the cause of this and fix it if they want to compete with Galaxy or iPhone cameras. However, it's not all bad. As I said, the colors are precise and natural, so as long as you keep the pictures Instagram sized, they are going to look fine. Props to Sony for still including dedicated camera button. That's something I wish other phone makers had as well. And finally, the speed is excellent. It opens up very fast and the autofocus tracking almost instantaneous. So yeah, no revolutions in the hardware, but everything seems to be solid. The software is nice and clean, very close to stock Android. You can uninstall most of the stock apps and change themes to make it look like Nexus. It is still the good old Android marshmallow, but nuggets should be coming in this month. In conclusion, I will say this about Sony Xperia ZX. This is not an exciting phone. It has a mediocre camera and okay specs, but maybe now, when the competition is so exciting that it literally blows up in excitement, or when they remove crucial features, maybe now is the time for a boring phone. A boring phone that looks great, works great, and is overall a solid choice. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, you know which button to press.